Lonely billionaire discovers incredible transformation after triplet girls whisper, "Be our dad." Jack Reynolds stood in the soft light of dawn filtering through his penthouse. The sprawling expanse of Silicon Valley sprawled out beneath him. He was a man revered and reviled, a billionaire whose empire was built on the relentless grind of late nights and unyielding ambition. Yet, in that moment, amid the luxury and chaos of his life, he felt a profound emptiness, a desolation that gnawed at him with relentless ferocity. The parties, the cars, the endless accolades, none of it filled the void left by memories of laughter shared in his childhood home. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, his heart sank further, wrapped in shadows of loneliness. Today was different. On a whim, he decided to venture outside, seeking solace in the local park. The chirping of birds and the rustle of leaves brought fleeting peace as he walked, yet unease simmered beneath the surface. His gaze fell upon a playground where 3 triplet girls, hopping with energy and joy, captured his attention. Their laughter was an echo of something he could barely remember, something he realized he craved deeply. When they approached him, their little faces bright with curiosity, they whispered in unison, "Will you be our dad?" A rush of conflicting emotions surged through him. He hesitated, feeling their innocent request seep into the cracks of his fortress, igniting a spark long buried. Could he, this titan of industry, actually find solace in fatherhood? The idea both terrified and exhilarated him. The prospect of connection after a lifetime of isolation was tantalizing, yet fraught with risks. For once he could be needed for more than bank transfers or business advice. But the query also reverberated with his deepest fears, the realization that he might not measure up to the role of father, a daunting standard that weighed heavily on his spirit. As he found himself engaging them in playful banter over homework and dreams, a sense of belonging unfolded. The triplets turned into his unexpected refuge, an escape from the constant expectations of the tech world. Laughter replaced the sterile silence of his home, yet a voice of doubt nagged at him. Their mother, Sarah, watched with thinly veiled skepticism. What if Jack's intentions were clouded with ulterior motives? She trudged through mounting bills, raising the girls alone, barely keeping their fragile lives on track. Jack was not a savior in her eyes, but a gilded outsider who could upend their hard-fought balance. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jack's involvement deepened as he felt the sting of unfairness that the girls endured at school, taunts from wealthier classmates and the pain of their father's absence carving deep scars. The urge to protect them stirred his longing for connection. But with Sarah's walls growing taller, tensions escalated. Jack wrestled with anguish. Would he be intruding into a space that was theirs alone? School troubles intensified as the girls faced bullying, their laughter muted by anxiety. Faced with setbacks, Jack felt pressured to prove that he could offer warmth, a familial bond, and stability beyond financial means. As a pivotal moment loomed in his mind, he prepared to unveil a plan to uplift them. But just as he steeled himself for the leap into fatherhood, a shocking revelation threatened the tender web he had begun to weave. The stakes escalated, bringing old fears to the forefront. Could he truly create a family, or was he destined to be just a bystander longing for warmth in the shadows of isolation? Jack stood at the threshold of his penthouse, the skyline bathed in golden hues that mirrored the chaos in his heart. The echoes of laughter from the park haunted him, filling the silence of his lavish surroundings with vibrant memories. It was a relentless reminder that something was shifting within him, a profound urge to embrace a life he had never truly known. After weeks of spending time with the girls, he had felt a change, one that was unsettling yet invigorating. The triplets had unwittingly unraveled a part of him that had long been disregarded, buried beneath layers of corporate ambition and solitude. Jack discovered a hesitance in himself. He wanted to step into the role they had offered him, yet with each step, the weight of responsibility pressed down harder. As the sun set, bringing shadows to the city landscape, he felt compelled to act. Jack had spent too long observing from a distance, crafting his strategies like an architect sketching a blueprint. If he were to truly be a father figure, he needed to create a solid foundation based on trust and love, not merely financial support or attention. This wasn't merely an experiment in companionship for him. This was a compelling choice he had to make. The next day, he returned to the park with a plan that pulsed with urgency. He sought to organize a community event, inviting other families for a day of fun and bonding. It would be a chance not just for the trio, but for Sarah too, to embrace the world that Jack lived in, a vibrant place filled with possibilities. Although still intimidated by her scrutiny, he sensed an emerging connection that could bridge their worlds. That morning brought unexpected revelations. As Jack set up a booth for games, he overheard the whispers of children discussing the triplets, how they were different and alone. A dark realization gripped him. The bullying he had witnessed at school ran deeper than innocent teasing. This notion ignited a fierce protective instinct, compelling him to act not as a wealthy benefactor, but as a true ally who then deserves compassion. Jack's heart raced as he brainstormed ways to empower the triplet girls. Teaching them something he could share, a skill, a passion, might help them reclaim their laughter and confidence. Programming classes, perhaps, which could unravel the mysteries of technology he had mastered. The idea could shift the narrative from helplessness to triumph. They could forge their own destiny. Yet, as excitement coursed through him, uncertainty loomed closer. Did he have the authority to step in and reshape their lives? Would it be viewed as interference or genuine mentorship? When he proposed this idea to the triplets later, their eyes sparkled with a mix of excitement and disbelief. But a glimmer of doubt surfaced as well. Would they question his intentions? Jack felt a pang of realization. Even in his attempt to connect, he might still be perceived as an outsider whose affections were transactional rather than sincere. Days passed, and he found himself confronting Sarah, hoping that his plans would resonate with her struggles. Always composed, she was the steadfast guardian, yet Jack sensed the vulnerability beneath her unwavering exterior. "You should think about what the girls need," she said, her voice steady but laced with guarded skepticism. The weight of her expectations challenged him. Could he be their safe harbor, or was he merely a flicker in the storm of their lives? Jack stood at a crossroads, battling an internal storm of fear and determination. If he failed, the fragile bond he had built might shatter. But beneath that fear, an unmistakable ember ignited within him, a rising resolve to fight for this family, even if his efforts brought forth rejection or misunderstanding. The moment approached when he would reveal his plans to Sarah, and possibly redefine their lives forever. As the clock ticked closer, the air around him thickened with tension. Would his intentions be enough to break down the walls she had constructed? Or would he remain just a passing figure in their story, longing for connection that could never be fulfilled? With a heart pounding in his chest, Jack gathered his strength, ready to step into the fray. The decisions he was about to make could either fortify the connection or dismantle the fragile balance that held them together. Could he truly embrace the role of protector, or would the shadows of his past eclipse the future he envisioned? Jack stood in front of Sarah's door, the soft hum of the city blending into a distant echo as he gathered his thoughts. His heart beat like a war drum, each pulse fueling his anxiety. With a deep breath, he knocked. The door creaked open, revealing Sarah's cautious expression. "Jack," she greeted, her tone neutral, yet the intensity in her gaze urged him to proceed carefully. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice steadier than he felt. He wanted to discuss not just the girls but the future, his role in it. Perhaps this meeting could transform him from being an outsider to an integral protector. As they settled on a couch draped in fabric that felt too plush for the hard truths he was about to confront, anxiety mingled with purpose. The weight of expectations loomed around them, a heavy cloak pulling him toward uncomfortable revelations. "I've been thinking a lot about the triplets," he began, words tumbling out in a rush that betrayed his preparation. "I want to teach them programming. I believe it could help them find their strength, Empower them. It's crucial that they feel capable, that they know they can redefine their narrative. Sarah regarded him with a simmering blend of skepticism and curiosity. And you think teaching them that will solve everything? They're not just looking for skills, Jack. They need support, a real connection. Her eyes searched his for sincerity, a validation he wasn't sure he could provide. The realization hit him hard. He had always operated in the realm of technology and finance, where logic reigned and emotional connections were often disregarded as unnecessary distractions. But this was different. He was attempting to step into a more nurturing, complicated role, a realm where vulnerability and empathy reigned. Sarah, I want to be there for them, Jack urged, his tone softening. The fierce protectiveness he felt for the triplets clashed violently with the skepticism he encountered. His instinct screamed at him to create a protective barrier around himself, to at least receive validation for his intentions before plunging in deeper. But how could he ask for acceptance without first offering it? They see you as a benefactor, Jack. A wealthy stranger trying to enter their lives. It's going to take more than a flashy offer to change their perceptions, she replied, her unwavering gaze cutting through him like a knife. The truth stung, but it also ignited a flicker of determination within him. What had he been focusing on, after all? A plan, a blueprint. He realized he needed to pivot from strategy to authenticity. This wasn't about programming alone. It was about connection, understanding their fears and hopes, their laughter and tears. Jack took a moment to gather his thoughts, parsing through his emotions and fears. What if I come to them not just as an instructor but as a mentor? I can share my journey, my setbacks and struggles. It might break down some walls. There's no formula for this, Jack, Sarah replied, now softer but still perceptibly guarded. You have to show them you care, and that you're here for them, consistently. The conversation resonated deeply, each word echoing in his mind. Could he shed the persona of the suave businessman and embrace the unadorned truth of his intentions? Over the next few days, he made an effort to engage genuinely with the girls. He spent time learning about their interests, addressing their fears openly, and slowly revealing pieces of himself. The transformation wasn't immediate, nor was it free from trepidation. But with each interaction, something shifted. The triplets began to warm up to him, the tentative smiles gradually blossoming into genuine laughter. Yet, just as he felt the foundation shifting beneath their connection, a knock came at the door of his penthouse. When he opened it, he was met with the concerned faces of the triplets, who had taken matters into their own hands to express their discontent with the state of affairs at their school. The rising tide of conflict brought a sense of urgency. Jack's mind raced. They were stepping into territory he hadn't anticipated. Would he stand with them, willing to confront the problems they faced head-on? Or would he retreat into the safety of inaction, fearful of the storm they were about to face together? Jack stood at the threshold, contemplating the confrontation that awaited him. This was a moment not just for the triplets, but for himself. Could he cast aside his past habits and become the figure they needed? The answer lay ahead, inviting him into the chaos. Jack's heart raced as he absorbed the determination etched on the triplets' faces. They were brimming with a fierce frustration he had only glimpsed in their earlier interactions. As they entered his penthouse, the atmosphere shifted from casual to serious, punctuated by their unspoken demands for change. This was no longer just about programming. It was about their lives, their hopes thrumming just beneath the surface. What are we going to do about school? The eldest Arya asked, her voice edged with urgency. Jack felt the weight of her eyes, burning with expectation. It forced him to confront not only their plight, but his own position in this tenuous relationship. He was no longer just an observer. He was being called to action. Okay, he replied, trying to sound authoritative despite the uncertainty in his gut. Tell me what's going on. The triplets exchanged glances, and he felt an unspoken bond between them, a unity he yearned to be part of. It struck him then. In this moment, they needed him to be more than a resource. They needed an ally. A silent understanding built up their resolve. They were all in this together. Perhaps his professional background in conflict resolution could offer them some direction. There's a group of kids at school who make fun of us, Lila spoke up, her voice trembling. They think it's funny that we're, well, different. They call us names, and we want it to stop. A pang shot through Jack's heart. The defensiveness he felt wanting to shield them clashed with the awkwardness of realizing that he needed to confront that very conflict as an effective guardian. Bullying can be tough, he said, choosing his words carefully. I want to help you stand up against it, but I need to understand how you've been dealing with it so far. What have you tried? The triplets' expressions shifted from desperation to hope, and they began recounting their experiences. With every word, Jack unraveled their frustrations and fears while stitching together his own resolve. They needed strategies, not just sympathy. He felt the thrill of purpose reignite as practical advice began to form in his mind. Have you considered reporting it? Talking to someone in charge? He asked, steering the conversation toward actionable steps. It never works. They get away with it every time, Arya admitted, frustration permeating her tone. Her response struck him deeply, igniting a fire within him. It showcased the systemic injustices they faced, not just on a personal level but as victims in a flawed institution. Suddenly, an idea sparked. What if we go together? The proposition felt bold as he spoke it out loud. I could meet with the school principal with you. We should express your concerns and make it clear that this needs to stop. This is your right. The triplets exchanged glances again, and Jack sensed their hesitation transforming into a flicker of hope. Perhaps he could train them to advocate for themselves, but first they would need to confront the institution as a united front. We can do it, Lila exclaimed, suddenly bubbling with excitement. You'll be there with us? Absolutely, Jack confirmed, his own spirit jumping at the thought. This was not just about voicing grievances, it was about cementing their partnership. However, an inner voice cautioned him to remain vigilant. What if the school responded defensively? What if he stumbled through the confrontation, allowing the triplets' hopes to crash? Just as doubt crept in, he reminded himself of the progress they had made together. He could articulate vulnerabilities he hadn't confronted before, integrate his professional skills while remaining true to the personal connections he was forging. As the triplets began to chatter excitedly about the approach they would take, Jack felt a swell of purpose deepening within him. He had taken a leap from mentor to advocate, and in doing so, he felt transformative forces working within himself. Could he truly leave behind his past, embracing the protector role they so desperately needed? Moments later, with their plans coming together, a knock on the door jolted them from their collaboration. Jack's heart sank as he glanced at the triplets. Who could that be? Arya asked warily, echoing his concern. With every knock echoing in the fragile air of their newly formed alliance, Jack knew they were about to face an unforeseen challenge, one that could impact not only their budding connection, but also the very fabric of their strategies moving forward. Would courage continue to guide him, or was the storm about to break? As Jack hesitantly approached the door, a myriad of emotions clashed within him, excitement, dread, and a hint of anticipation. He took a moment to compose himself, reminding himself that whatever lay beyond the threshold, he had a purpose now. The triplets deserved someone in their corner, and perhaps he could be that beacon of strength they needed. He opened the door with a slight creak, revealing a tall figure cloaked in familiar arrogance. It was Gary, his former business partner, the embodiment of everything Jack had resolved to leave behind. Jack? Gary drawled, the condescension evident in his effortless demeanor. What a surprise. I figured you'd be over your head in work by now. Jack felt a sickening lurch of anxiety at the sight of him. His earlier resolve momentarily dimmed. What do you want, Gary? He asked, forcing the words out with more authority than he felt. I just came to see how you're adjusting to life as a recluse. He smirked, giving Jack a condescending once-over. I mean, what's this? A three-girl support group? You'll forgive me if I don't think of you as their protector. The taunt hung heavy in the air, launching a wave of unease. Jack realized the malicious intent behind Gary's visit wasn't limited to mocking him. It was a direct confrontation with his past choices. Yet, amid the uneasiness, he felt a flicker of something different. Determination. He stepped closer to the doorway, blocking Gary's entry with an air of newfound confidence. They deserve better than what you offered them, Gary, Jack replied. meeting his old colleague's gaze with unwavering fierceness. "Their voices matter, and I refuse to let you belittle their struggles." Gary raised an eyebrow, the air crackling with tension. "Ah," the noble savior with a conscience. "What's next, Jack? Hosting motivational workshops on life lessons from the great failures?" Inside, Jack's heart raced with rage, mixed with self-doubt. Gary's attacks had stung in the past, often striking at his insecurities. But this time, he sensed a shift within himself, a newfound strength that solidified his purpose. He had something to protect now, something far more valuable than business ventures. He had the triplets and their future to consider. "Enough, Gary," he said more firmly. "You don't understand what they've been through. You never did." At that moment, Jack felt a fluttering in his gut. What might have once been a paralyzing fear had morphed into a resolute fortitude. Confrontation wouldn't spell his own demise. It was an opportunity for growth. The triplets were counting on him, and he could feel their collective spirit resonating within him. They had inspired him to forge ahead. He closed the door slightly, keeping it ajar only enough to maintain some distance. "I suggest you leave. You're out of your depth here." Gary leaned closer, challenging Jack's resolve. "You think you can take on the world of the elite with these girls? You're kidding yourself. This will end poorly for you." Jack's mind raced. Those words, while designed to intimidate, ignited his spirit further. What if he harnessed Gary's taunts as fuel for their upcoming confrontation at school? An internal metamorphosis began, unearthing a warrior within him, one prepared to fight against not only external foes, but also the fear that used to bind him. Before he could articulate a response, Lila's voice broke through the tension. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her concern palpable. Jack turned, meeting her anxious gaze alongside Arya and Lila. This interaction, their juxtaposition of innocence and the new burden of advocacy, shifted his perception. He couldn't let anyone diminish their spirit, not even himself. "Everything's fine," he reassured them with a newfound steadiness. "But I'm about to teach a lesson." With the door still partially open, Jack faced Gary again, breathing deeply. "You don't get to dictate my worth anymore. The days of hiding are over." Suddenly, he understood the stakes, not just for him, but for the triplets as well. What had begun as a chance encounter had transmuted into a crucible of sorts. A battle for redemption, not just for his own past, but for the bright future of those children. "Next time you want to come here and waste my time, remember this. I fight back now," he declared, feeling the weight of his own convictions anchoring him. As Jack closed the door on Gary and turned to the triplets, a wave of empowerment flooded through him. They were collectively stepping into uncharted territory, and this was only the beginning. But amid the triumph, a niggling doubt remained. Would the confrontation at school go awry? With the echo of Gary's taunts still ringing in his ears, Jack knew the real challenge awaited them just around the corner. He had to steel himself for the confrontation, whatever form it might take. The school hallways buzzed with chatter, the faint echoes of laughter and excitement contrasting sharply with the knot of tension forming in Jack's stomach. He had arrived early, the morning sun casting long shadows as he paced outside the entrance. It felt surreal. Just days ago, he had stood on the precipice of a decision that seemed insurmountable. Now he was preparing to step into a world filled with emotional stakes and social complexities. Arya, Lila, and Lana were somewhere inside, possibly navigating their day with the resilience he had come to admire. Yet they were vulnerable, and the thought of them facing Gary or any of his former enterprise associates sent waves of dread cascading through him. At that moment, Jack understood what guardianship truly meant. It was a blend of fierce protection and the readiness to empower others. He took a deep breath, remembering the resolve he felt when confronting Gary. "They need me," he reminded himself. With newfound purpose, he entered the school amid clusters of students. Their casual banter contrasted with his heightened senses. Every sneer, each whispered judgment felt magnified. He had to remind himself that the environment he feared so much was also filled with opportunity. Each student could be a potential ally or, at the very least, a spectator to the changes he intended to undertake. Navigating the bustle, He found the girls huddled together at a lunch table, their laughter infectious. As he approached, their eyes lit up, and he felt his heart warm at the sight of their camaraderie. "You're here early?" Lila exclaimed, her optimism radiating. "I wanted to make sure you're okay," he said, slipping into a chair beside them, not ready to disclose the weight of his apprehension. Arya leaned in, her eyes glimmering with a mischievous spark. "Did you scare off your old partner?" Jack chuckled, the sound surprisingly buoyant. "You could say that in a way, but I'm more concerned about what happens next." "A true protector thinks ahead," Lana said, her brow furrowed with youthful seriousness. "What's the plan?" The triplets' curiosity kindled his spirit. They were looking to him not just for reassurance, but as a guide. He had dwelled in a haze of self-doubt for too long. "The plan is to face whatever comes our way, together." Their smiles broadened, and in that moment, he peeled back the layers of self-imposed isolation. This bond was invaluable. They were not just girls he wanted to defend. They were mirrors reflecting the growth he sought in himself. As the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, a sudden wave of apprehension washed over him. Today would set the tone for how they navigated the landscape of adversity ahead. What if things didn't go as planned? Doubts lingered at the edge of his consciousness. He had experienced an empowering shift, but was it enough to face the school culture, fiercely ensnared in childish hierarchies? "Whatever happens, we're in this together," he said, still determined to project confidence. The girls nodded solemnly, yet their expressions held trust, a weighty responsibility on his shoulders. Class commenced, and as the day unfolded, Jack's instincts buzzed. The environment shifted as he began to notice small groups forming whispers, some targeting the triplets. It stung, a reminder that not everyone would welcome their newfound advocacy. As he braced, he realized he had to step into that role. He could not merely shield them, he needed to become their advocate. "Today," he declared to himself quietly, "I face them all." With determination fueling his stride, he approached the classroom door where an assembly of students gathered, a confrontation looming. He took an unsteady step forward, then paused, feeling a rush of adrenaline mixed with fear. The echoes of ridicule from Gary reverberated in his mind, but now they possessed no power over him. Tomorrow awaited with promises of challenge and change. This was a trial by fire, not just for the triplets, but for him as well. And as the door swung wide, he pushed inside. The moment he entered, a hush fell over the room. Faces turned towards him, skepticism mixed with surprise. The moment had arrived. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steadying as he prepared to lay everything on the line. "Let's talk about the future we can create together." Jack's heart raced. He was ready to shatter expectations and redefine what it meant to stand strong. Change was inevitable, but how revolutionary would it truly be? And then, as he began to speak, a familiar and unwelcome figure loomed at the back of the classroom, a smirk plastered on his face. Gary had returned, seeking another round. Jack's heart sank, but his resolve hardened. This was only the beginning. Jack took a breath, forcing his doubts to the back of his mind. Gary's presence sent prickles of tension spiraling through him, but he couldn't afford to show weakness now. This wasn't just about him or the triplets anymore. It was about setting a precedent, a challenge against the very atmosphere of hostility that had grown rampant over the years. "Why should we listen to you?" A voice piped up from the back, a boy known for his sharp sarcasm. The rest of the class erupted into snickers, fueling the growing tide against him. Jack's chest constricted. The bastion of his resolve was suddenly under siege. "Because we have a choice," he retorted, his voice breaking through the laughter. "A choice to build a community that doesn't fold under the weight of ridicule, to uplift instead of tear down." The words were out before he could hesitate, spoken with a fire he didn't know he possessed. He scanned the room, catching Arya's encouraging nod, Lila's fierce determination, and Lana's unwavering support. They believed in him. That belief, that loyalty, gave him a renewed strength. Yet the smirk on Gary's face seemed to challenge everything Jack had just declared. "Please, another utopian speech?" Gary spat. stepping further into the room, his confidence radiating like a dark aura. "What's different about you? You're still just a pawn in a game you've barely started to comprehend." The students exchanged looks. Uncertainty mingled with the allure of Gary's bravado. The flicker of their resolve threatened to dim, and Jack knew he had to act decisively. "What I've learned, Gary, is that it's time to stop being afraid of the game." He fired back, embracing the challenge. "It's not about playing it perfectly. It's about choosing who you want to be in it." The intensity of his words spun the atmosphere on its axis. For a moment, silence enveloped the room, as uncertainty gripped the collective consciousness of the students. What would they choose? Jack's heart thundered. This was the moment of clarity amidst chaos. Deep down, he still felt the tether of self-doubt, but now it was woven with a relentless thread of purpose. He was transcending from just a guardian into an advocate ready to shake the very foundations of the school's toxic environment. "Do you want to be part of the problem, or can we become part of the solution?" he pressed, casting a glance at those who had been mocking his intentions. Some of them met his gaze with hesitation, their facade cracking under the weight of his sincerity. Gary, undeterred, shifted tactics. "And if someone stands in your way? What happens then? Will you fight?" His challenge was pointed, yet Jack sensed the undercurrent of fear in the boy's voice as he confronted the possibility that his position might weaken. The question rang loudly in Jack's mind. What was he willing to stand for? It wasn't just the triplets he felt accountable to. It was the potential within each student, a challenge to rise above their usual roles. "I will stand, I will fight, and I will fight with others," he proclaimed fiercely. "Together, we are stronger than any cruelty you can throw at us." A murmur moved through the crowd. Jack wasn't just talking about protections. He was presenting a possibility, a call to arms for something greater than himself, or even the triplets. Arya, Lila, and Lana began to exchange looks, and he could feel their energy spiking in unison with his advance. Jack focused on delivering the vision of unity he had articulated earlier, even as the confrontation with Gary hung over him. The challenge felt daunting, but invigorating. "Let's create a new narrative," he suggested, allowing the smallest flicker of optimism to fuel his words. "One where we don't have to defend ourselves or each other, but instead, hold each other up." The bell rang again, startling Jack from his intensity, yet he knew the conversation wouldn't just end here. There would be fallout. He could feel it brewing. As students shuffled towards the door, he caught Gary whispering to his followers, their faces contorted in disbelief and disdain. Jack steeled himself for retaliation, sensing it looming just outside their newly forged camaraderie. Would they grasp the chance for something better? Or would they retreat back into the safety of their entrenched social hierarchies? Jack wasn't sure what awaited him beyond this moment, but he knew he couldn't turn back now. The next chapter in his journey was unfolding rapidly, and he wasn't just the protector anymore. He was leading a movement. Whatever came next would be where he truly learned the true extent of his strength, and perhaps the moment where he would discover what it meant to become part of something much larger than himself. And as he stepped out of the classroom, the air thick with tension, he knew with certainty that he'd have to confront Gary once more. But now it wouldn't be just a personal battle. It would be a confrontation for every student struggling behind the scenes. The stakes had just risen. Jack's pulse quickened as he navigated the crowded hallway, a newfound determination coursing through him. The laughter and whispers around him felt amplified, but now they morphed from oppressive taunts to mere background noise, a reminder of the battlefield he had stepped into. He was venturing into uncharted territory, where the stakes extended beyond personal bravado. They involved reshaping the realm in which he and his peers operated. Despite the overwhelming anxiety clinging to him like an old jacket, Jack's mind raced with the possibilities that lay ahead. He could feel the fire ignited by his words still glowing within him, challenging him to build a culture of support instead of mockery. But at the forefront of his thoughts was the looming dread of Gary's retort. The pressure of an impending confrontation weighed heavily on his shoulders, but he couldn't afford to let fear dictate his path. "Are you really prepared to back it up?" A voice interrupted his brooding. It was Lila, hastily walking to keep pace alongside him. Her brow was knitted in concern. the brightness in her eyes a stark contrast to the tension swirling around them. "I have to be," Jack admitted, swallowing hard. "If I don't show up for them, who will? It can't just be about today. It has to matter tomorrow and beyond." "That's brave, Jack. But bravery isn't just words. You'll have to act on them." Her voice softened, shifting from concern to solidarity. The warmth radiating from her was comforting, though it also reminded him of the weight of responsibility he had taken on. He nodded, absorbing her words but feeling an underlying fear crash against his resolve. What if he faltered? What if he couldn't hold this fragile alliance together? The thought churned inside him, but he captured it and pushed it aside. He had made a promise to himself, and now he had to honor it by digging deeper. As they approached their next class, the buzz around them shifted. Students shuffled uneasily, casting glances toward him, their reactions an unpredictable mixture of curiosity and retreat. Just then, Gary emerged from a group of his followers, his smug smirk plastered across his face like an impenetrable mask. Jack's heart dropped, each beat gathering weight in his gut. "Jack," Gary called out, his voice dripping with condescension. "I hope you're ready for the spotlight. You might need more than just fairy tales to convince people." Jack felt a rush of adrenaline, channeling Lila's words. He wouldn't just defend himself. He needed to seize this confrontation. "I'm not here for fairy tales. I'm here for reality, one that isn't built on belittling others." The laughter echoed again, but this time it was much quieter, muffled by the tension in the air. With each heartbeat, Jack felt himself evolving, standing taller, anchoring himself in the ground beneath him. He wasn't just reacting anymore. He was claiming his narrative. "And what happens when reality hits you hard, Jack?" Gary leaned closer, the challenge igniting a spark of defiance inside him. "One little hiccup, and all your dreams go up in smoke. Are you prepared for that?" Jack forced himself to maintain eye contact, examining the flicker of unease behind Gary's bravado. "Maybe you're right. Maybe setbacks will come, but I refuse to back down because of fear." A ripple of uncertainty spread through the surrounding students. Perhaps they too sensed the risk in Gary's venomous challenge. Jack took a breath, knowing that inspiration was born from places scarred by defiance. He decided now was the time to present his vision clearly, so they would see the truth in his determination. "I'm not looking for a fairy tale. I'm seeking a community where we raise each other up when things get tough. If that includes fighting off challenges like yours, then so be it. I'll stand and fight for that." As he finished his statement, he watched the crowd, caught between admiration and skepticism. The tipping point hung in the air, slowly teetering toward him. Could he turn the tide? Was persistent passion enough? As he faced Gary, he sensed a shift within himself. He was no longer simply a protector, nor merely a voice against negativity. Jack was becoming the embodiment of a movement, however nascent, a beacon of potential wrapped in uncertainty. But as he moved to take another step forward, he sensed Gary's ploy twist hard. Jack's mind raced. There would always be consequences. What would Gary do next? How much harder would he fight? And was Jack truly ready for that battle? The clash was inevitable, but the true test of his character would reveal itself in the moments when darkness threatened to overtake the light. Jack felt the moment approach, everything stark and uncertain. Would his belief in transformation endure? Would he lead with integrity, or fall back into shadows? The confrontation was about to unfold, and Jack could feel that the war for his vision, and for every student gathered beside him, was just beginning. The air crackled with a tension that seemed to envelop Jack like a thick fog. He could feel every gaze upon him, their weight pressing into his shoulders, urging him to either step back into the safety of silence or to double down on the words that had surprisingly escaped his mouth. Jack's heart raced, pulsing with a mix of fear and exhilaration. It was the kind of moment that could break or make a person. "Do you think you've got what it takes?" Gary challenged, his tone a deliberate mingling of mockery and intimidation. "How long before they see your facade for what it is?" Jack's mind spun as he wrestled with the implications of Gary's words. He didn't have a clear answer, but one thing was becoming increasingly clear. He could not back down now. Not just for himself, but for everyone who stood by him, even if they remained silent. His feet planted firmly on the linoleum floor, he embraced the challenging moment. "I'm not trying to sell a facade," Jack replied, his voice ringing with newfound assurance. "I'm trying to create something real, something that lasts." For a fleeting second, he felt the ground shift between them, the air thawing into a tentative warmth. Perhaps that was what Gary feared most, a reality where Jack's vision could gain root and flourish. But before he could savor the moment, Gary sneered, "And what happens when everyone realizes you're just a scared kid?" The snickers erupted again, but Jack could sense the hesitance in a few of the faces contorted with mockery. "Maybe I am," Jack said, letting the admission tumble out. "But I'd rather stand up scared than hide behind someone else's confidence." Lila's nod from the periphery sent a surge of strength through him. He was no longer alone. The stakes were rising, and so was his resolve. He took a deep breath, tapping into a wellspring of clarity he hadn't known was there. It's not about being fearless. It's about being willing to face fear every single day. "What makes you think anyone cares what you think?" Gary shot back, clearly rattled despite his bravado. "What makes you the leader here?" In that moment, Jack understood the nature of influence. It wasn't rooted in bullying or bravado. It was born from vulnerability and authenticity. His voice steadied as he responded, "Because I want to listen. I want to understand what you're afraid of, what you need, and how collectively we can fight back against anything that makes us weak." A flicker of uncertainty glimmered in Gary's eyes, and Jack seized the moment. "Maybe you think power is about tearing others down, but I think it takes bravery to lift people up. That's real strength." The air shifted, heavy with a palpable intensity. Jack noticed the mixed expressions of the crowd, some still wrapped in skepticism, others visibly considering his words. Here was the reality he had sought to touch, the profound connection, the raw energy of challenge and transformation. What he hadn't anticipated rocked his core. He had merely brushed the surface of a deeper truth. There was something inside him awakening, a determination rooted deeply in the desire for change. Yet with this revelation, there came an unwelcome companion: doubt. The laughter around him quieted to whispers. Jack felt the tide turning, but uncertainty lurked, reminding him there was much left to conquer. Was he truly equipped to lead, to uphold his ideals when the true battle arose? The crowd's shift was subtle, yet he sensed its significance. If only he could grasp this moment tighter. Jack took another step, more figurative ground beneath him, and turned to face Gary, who had processed the assault on his pride. "Let's see how tough you are when the pressure really builds," Gary spat, a sinister grin edging back onto his face. It was a warning, an alert that the battle was far from over. Jack's instincts flared. He had awakened something in himself, a flicker of potential that hungered to manifest fully. But with every surge of resolution came questions, looming specters waiting to pounce. As he stood in the crucible of the moment, he realized that what lay ahead would demand more than he was prepared for. Would he rise to the occasion, or would the tide wash him away once again? The world felt poised on the brink, each moment a new chance for courage or collapse. And as he prepared to answer Gary's taunt, he understood he stood at a crossroads that might change everything. What was he willing to sacrifice to transform potential into action? And was he ready for the fallout of what might come next? As the tension between Jack and Gary hung palpably in the air, Jack felt the weight of expectation pressing down on him. This wasn't just a battle to defend himself. It was a chance to redefine who he was, one who would not shy away from confrontation, but confront the challenges head-on. With a steady, yet fierce voice, Jack gathered his thoughts, fully aware that every syllable held the power to mold not just his future, but that of the triplets and those watching. "You think strength is measured by how loud you can belittle others? Real strength comes in supporting those who need it most." The moment was electric. Jack caught the flicker of disbelief in Gary's eyes, and behind him he noticed some students nodding, the first inklings of support taking root like seedlings in the cracks of a concrete pavement. They were starting to question the legacy of cruelty that Gary had long since cast. "What are you, some sort of hero now?" Gary scoffed. but the edge had dulled in his voice, revealing a hint of uncertainty that Jack seized upon. "You're just another part of the problem." Drawing a deep breath, Jack turned slightly to his audience, recognizing the importance of them witnessing this moment. "I'm part of the solution. I'm not here for accolades. I'm here for the triplets and all of you who feel pushed aside. If we can stand up together, we can change this landscape. No more hiding." The palpable energy shifted in the room. Jack wasn't just fighting for survival in this context. He was advocating for a collective transformation. The realization crystallized. He had the capacity to uplift others while dismantling the toxic hierarchy. With each word, a sense of empowerment coursed through him, and he took an indomitable step toward Gary. The boy's confidence faltered further as Jack pressed on. "If we keep allowing fear to dictate our actions, the darkness will prevail. But can't you see? We have a choice to flip the narrative. We can cultivate respect instead of enmity. We can uplift each other." Jack felt a rush of adrenaline, his pulse racing not from fear but exhilaration. This was the moment he had anticipated, the moment that would lead him away from profound isolation and directly into purpose. Then, amidst the electric atmosphere, Jack turned back to the triplets, their eyes wide, imbued with trust. They had witnessed his evolution, his transformation into more than a solitary billionaire. He was becoming an advocate, an ally, a father figure. "With your strength and voice, I know we can make this change. You are not just triplets. You are a powerful unit that can inspire everyone. Let's make this happen together." As Jack stood alongside the three girls, he felt the swell of pride. He saw their smiles brighten the room. The connection was no longer merely about him stepping into the void. They, too, were stepping into their roles as conquerors of fear. Just then, as if sensing the shift, Gary lost his pretense, exposing the vulnerability beneath his bravado. "You think you can turn my followers against me? Look around you. Who's really listening?" Jack felt the tension thicken again, but, bolstered by the growing warmth radiating from the students rallying alongside him, he squared his shoulders. People are always watching. When someone finally dares to stand against the tide, they find the strength within themselves they never knew existed. The ripple of murmurings crescendoed into a whisper of agreement. Jack could sense the tide turning. Unity was blossoming from the moments of vulnerability shared that day, not just in his life but in the collective hearts seeking change. As the bell rang to signal the end of class, he braced himself, knowing what lay on the other side was bigger than confrontations with Gary. It was about carving out a space for everyone to thrive. He carried within him a sense of fulfillment, a recognition that he had stepped beyond his fears and into a commitment to forge connections that mattered. Jack embraced the knowledge that growth didn't come without resistance, and that he too had evolved. From a billionaire locked in his lonely fortress, to a fatherly figure, a leader devoted to honest connections. As he exited the classroom, he felt the light on his face, fueled by the smiles of the triplets and the murmurings of support from those around him. As he strolled through the bustling corridors, a thought pierced through the haze. He had not just conquered fear, he had proven to himself that change is possible when one commits to a greater purpose. The vulnerability he showed had transformed him, and now a vision expanded across the horizon, one of nurtured connections and authentic relationships. Jack Reynolds was no longer a lonely billionaire. He had become a devoted protector of a new family, one built not on wealth or status, but love, understanding, and a fierce willingness to stand together. And so, for the first time, he embraced not just his successes but his vulnerabilities, finding fulfillment in their intertwined paths. Join Jack on his incredible journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your voice matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is a moment of strength, and you need to be part of it.